Black Cat Crafts, the channel that helps you personalize your Lemax or Department 56 Halloween village. Today's craft takes 4 dollar store signs, so these cute little fairy garden signs, and spookifies them, makes them signs perfect for your Halloween village vignette. So first, let's talk about the supplies that you'll need. Obviously, you'll need to hit the dollar store and get those fairy signs, some paints, and then some cheap paintbrushes. I recommend Mod Podge and Sculpy or your favorite type of polymer clay. I also picked up some sand and stones from the dollar store. Those are decorations that we add to the bases. So starting at the beginning, we want to prep those signs because they're so cute and fun and sunny and nice and warm and totally inappropriate for your village. So start off by roughly smashing. This is ideal for someone who's not that familiar with clay. You're not looking for anything pretty or perfect. So make it rough, make it your own. But the idea is we want to cover the embossed or the lettering that's carved in there. So those sign letterings are dug into the plastic, if you're not that familiar with the embossed term. So that's something that we're doing. We're covering it all up. So later on we will bake these. So don't worry about the fact that they're plastic and we're putting it in the oven. You bake it at such a low temperature that these never go soft and they never emit any volatile organic chemicals. So those two are done. The last one I did off screen, and I basically just put a whole ton of clay on it to cover up the clock, and you'll see that coming up next. So I put it on a piece of aluminum foil, or aluminium as the Brits say, and then again, just encased that clock sign with a bunch of polymer clay, made it have a rough edge, and then took a butter knife and drew the lines. So that's what those are. We don't need them to be perfect, which is my point here. This is a great beginner's project, so don't stress about that step. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to bake it and then we're going to paint it. So this clay, you bake it about 200 degrees Fahrenheit for as long as it takes. So for those little signs, it took about 10 minutes. For the sign in the middle, it took substantially longer because remember, I encased the clock in clay. So it's hidden. You do see a little bit of a bump. That's not going to be a problem later on in the project. So this step shows me painting. So I'm using your basic brown acrylic paint. Water-based, no real smell to speak of. And I'm using a very light coat. Again, no artistic talent needed. The idea here is we want this to be one uniform color. And if you want to get fancy, you can smash a little bit extra paint in the grooves or in those lines you made. That will help emphasize them because the paint will be more concentrated there as it dries. So it's a great look. I need to do all the sides on mine because my village can be viewed from 360 degrees, so full circle. If yours is just one side only, you can make the executive decision not to paint all 4 sides. Don't forget to cover up all those gorgeous flowers with paint. After all, it's very rare that flowers are spooky. There is one exception, and that is our carnivorous daffodils. So check out that video. That takes dollar store flowers and combines them with a Little Shop of Horrors Audrey 2 concept to make them 100% awesomely scary. So again, check that out. It's really fun. So as you see here, I'm continuing to paint, making sure everything is completely covered to my liking. And then the waiting happens. You gotta let that paint dry to do the next step. So while you're setting these aside to let them dry, why don't you go ahead and get your computer out? Because we're going to make the actual signs. Now you could paint these images, these letters on, but I chose to use Microsoft Word, free fonts, and free stock images to print not only the background but also the lettering on my signs. So I'm doing a total of 4 signs, actually technically 5 because one is double-sided. But I love this part because I simply don't have the artistic talent and the firm, steady hand to do lettering like this at this size. You know, these are tiny Spooky Town sizes. They are definitely, next level painting. So the printing these out really worked well for me, and the end result looks absolutely perfect. So I'm sure the result will look well for you too. Okay, so come out. Doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to fit these to the right size on the actual project. So let's start with the hardest one first. First, we're going to do the sign that says "Beware of Kraken." Now you see there, I'm using Mod Podge and a paintbrush, and I'm coating not only the sign, but the back of the paper, and then next the front as well. This is a really important step because paper will curl if you only get one side wet, and Mod Podge is water-based. So very important to get it uniformly wet and then to use a very gentle brush. Now the paper, I should mention, is your regular printer paper. The ink is an old inkjet printer, nothing special about it. I used regular printer settings. It turned out fantastic, and again, if you don't scrub too hard, the paper won't rip and your ink won't run. I can't speak for a laser jet, so if you have big money, laser jet money, I don't know if this project will work great for you, but it works well with an inkjet printer. So at this point in the project, I have fit the top of the sign. I wanted to wrap around the wood look to the top, not necessarily the back, because that will be a different sign later on, but you definitely could. If you're making this at home, this is your project. You do it your way. So now I'm using, not only the brush, but my fingers to help, again, fit the sign to the itty bitty crevices and cracks on the ends of the sign. So now that I have a better idea of where it's going to sit on the particular sign, I've finished the cut, so a more fine cut with the scissors, and then used a razor knife to do the very fine cuts to get it to fit just right. And here I'm not even using a razor knife to cut, I'm actually using it to push it into the cracks and crevices. So it's a fantastic look. I'm really happy with how it looks in the end. Now right now you'll notice that the Mod Podge is still white. It does dry clear. And I chose Mod Podge because I don't find that it flakes. So some of your other white glues, they do tend to flake off later on down the road. And I only want to make this once, so I really recommend the Mod Podge. Yes, it costs a little bit more. It's white when you put it on, but that dries completely clear, as you'll see right now. So the end sign looks phenomenal. I did add some rocks at the bottom and a little sand because this is going to go on my Beware of Kraken toxic waste beach that you'll see a little later on my channel. So like and subscribe, folks, to see more great ideas. The next sign I'm going to make is the back of the Beware of Kraken sign. This was a suggestion from my daughter who said, that's almost Beware of Karen, right? So it's too good of an idea to pass up. So yes, so we're doing Beware of Karen right now. Hilarious, I can't wait. So same process as before, coating all sides with Mod Podge, and then finesse, cutting using the brush to fit the sign image to the actual sign and signpost. Using a generous amount of Mod Podge because it gets nice and hard and encases the sign. So again, the base of itself, I did expand using a little bit of clay and the stones, and that was on purpose. The original base, if you recall, was quite small. It was perfect for the clock that the dollar store had, but not so great for an expanded sign. So you will want to be thoughtful about how your signs will work when you do something like this to make them larger. So in this case, I used clay, some rocks, and some sand because Toxic Waste Beach, it's got sand, it works perfect. And then I also made a little pumpkin. Now that is another video you can check out, also a beginner polymer clay tutorial. So check that video out if you want to make your own pumpkins. I know you can buy them on other websites. I've seen them for as low as $15 for 15, so $1 a piece. But I made mine for a lot less, and it looks great on the Beware of Karen sign. So sign number 2, this one gets easier. In fact, the Beware of Kraken, Beware of Karen is the most difficult one yet. So this sign is the same as the others, except because it's a more simple design, I was able to cut it already exact just using a regular scissors. So I don't have to do any of the funny business with a razor knife and rough and then fine cutting. So you see there, I've also coated it on all sides, just like the other sign with the Mod Podge. And then I'm using the brush to get the right amount of Mod Podge on there and to finesse the sign into place. Now I am coating all the sides with the Mod Podge, and you may be asking why? That doesn't make any sense. Well, it does because this Mod Podge is gloss, and it's a look I love. If you like Department 56, you'll also notice that a lot of their little individual figurines and their pieces, they're a gloss finish as well. So this fits in really well with them. Lemax, you get a variety with them. So you may want to opt for a matte finish Mod Podge if you prefer those products. Now the Punkin Patch. Yes, I spelled it pumpkin, not pumpkin, on purpose. I do know how to spell. It's terrifying, right? To spell something wrong. Ah! Okay, so this one is an irregular sign. None of the lengths are even, none of the angles are the same, and so I use my fingers to smash the dry paper onto the sign. Now I'm rough cutting it with the scissors, and then I will fine cut it when I've got it on the piece. So 3 different ways to fit the paper to the signs, 3 different signs. It all worked out for me. So now you see I expanded this sign's base as well with some pumpkins that I made, as well as some stones. And then I've added the Mod Podge to the sign just like before, now that I've rough cut the paper. And now I'm going to add the paper to the sign itself. If this looks familiar, it's because you've seen it 3 times before with the 2 Kraken Karen sign and then the Halloween Village sign, the one that was inspired by Jack Skellington and The Nightmare Before Christmas. So with the Punkin Patch, that one fit really well. My rough cut was almost perfect, and I am just using my finger to move the sign ever so gently on the piece and then to fold down the one edge so it's a nice, even, consistent look. So done! I really like how this one turned out as well. It's going to be perfect for my Punkin Patch vignette when I get that set up. Last sign, final sign for this video is the Keep Out sign. So this one wasn't included in the beginning, so I've gone ahead and done the same thing as before. I took the welcome sign out of that other package of Fairy Garden signs, and I'm smashing the clay into it. This is, again, meant to be rough, meant to be rugged, meant to be scary, spooky. This was a sign. If you're thinking it looks familiar, you're right. I did this sign as part of a set of dupes. So Department 56 came out with a trio of signs that are on Walmart.com's website for almost $60. You heard that right. 60 US dollars. Walmart.com. Oh, but I just checked. They're on sale for nearly $40. So yeah, I don't have that kind of money for a trio of signs. So I used a Fairy Garden sign and some other creativity to make those other signs. Same techniques as you saw before. I'm using a knife there to make the wood look lines. I've painted the post because it had some gorgeous flowers on it, and I made a little worm that's like going back to kindergarten with the clay there, and I'm going to wrap it around after I paint the whole thing brown. This is a painting technique we haven't talked about, so I'm using more of a dry brush technique here, where there's very little paint on the brush, and the brush is dry, not wet. The idea is you want to smash the paint into the little grooves, and then once you've got it in the grooves, then you try to brush it off the top. So the grooves are darker than the part that's raised. It gives it a more dramatic, rough, scary look. It's used very commonly when you have a fake wood. So now we're going to bake it in the oven or dry per your clay's package directions. And here comes the tough part. So this one I opted to hand paint. This wasn't easy, folks. And it really hard to film as well, so I apologize you just see my big fat hand. If you don't have a steady hand, if you don't like the way your lettering looks in paint, highly recommend also doing this in Word, just like the other signs, and then doing a print and Mod Podge, cut and glue to the sign. It'll save you a lot of stress. But in this case, I did try to go the old-fashioned way and hand paint it. So it took quite a bit of time. This video is actually sped up about 2 times to do it. Now I'm making the skull. The skull was so tiny that I struggled to get the eyes and the nose correct, so I actually used a fine tip Sharpie to do it. Not the easiest thing in the world because it was bumpy. So again, recommend doing the print. Now that is a dead end sign, as I mentioned earlier. It was part of a trio of signs in a previous project. So if you like this video, comment, share, subscribe. And if you want to see more of my videos, I would definitely recommend checking these other ones out. They'll help you personalize your Lemax or Department 56 village. So thanks for stopping by, and I hope to see you again soon.